Psalm 23 is not merely a comforting passage for moments of difficulty. It is a profound declaration of God's provision, protection, and purpose in our lives. It is a blueprint for living a life of faith and trust, even in the midst of the challenges that we face. For many who were chosen by God, faith and good intentions are present, yet financial struggles remain a reality. Psalm 23 contains a hidden truth, a divine secret that has the power to radically change how we approach our struggles and challenges. As we dig deeper into the wisdom embedded in each verse, we are invited into a transformative journey that will alter the way we live, trust, and navigate the obstacles that come our way. The first verse of this powerful psalm declares, "The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want." These words speak to the very heart of our existence as believers. When David, a shepherd himself, wrote this verse, he was not simply acknowledging God as a provider. He was making a statement of trust, a declaration of reliance on God as the shepherd who leads and guides his people. To say, "I shall not want," is not just about the material things we desire, but about the deep, spiritual truth that God is the source of everything we need. This is more than a prayer of comfort. It is a faith declaration, one that calls us to trust in God's provision even in the absence of abundance, and to know that He is our ultimate source of sustenance. No matter how dire our circumstances may seem, God promises to provide, guide, and protect us. The imagery of green pastures in Psalm 23 goes far beyond just the need for physical rest. It calls us into a spiritual renewal, a reminder that we must pause and rest in God's care. The world constantly pressures us to strive and push forward, to accumulate wealth and possessions. Yet God, in His infinite wisdom, invites us to rest. This rest is not about passivity. It is about trusting in God's provision and finding peace in His presence. When we are weary, when we feel drained by the demands of life, God leads us to green pastures, places of renewal, where we find nourishment and strength for the journey ahead. These are not barren fields, but places where God's provision and care are abundant. He leads me beside still waters, speaks to the deep peace and abundance that comes from God's presence. The still waters are not just a symbol of physical peace, but also spiritual rest and trust in God's sufficiency. In the midst of life's chaos, in the face of trials and hardships, God offers us His peace, a peace that surpasses understanding and keeps our hearts and minds anchored in Him. When we trust in God's provision, we are no longer bound by the fear of lack. We can rest in the assurance that God will provide everything we need, just as He has promised in His Word. As we move forward, we come to the verse, "He restores my soul." Restoration is not merely about fixing what is broken, but about the complete renewal of our hearts, minds, and spirits. This restoration is an ongoing process, a continual work of God in our lives. Every wound, every hurt, every disappointment is healed in God's presence as He transforms us into vessels of His love, grace, and peace. God does not simply mend the brokenness of our lives. He transforms it, turning our pain into purpose, our trials into testimony. This journey of restoration is one of surrender, surrendering our struggles, our hurts, and our disappointments to God, allowing Him to heal and restore us. "He leads me in paths of righteousness for His name's sake," speaks to the direction that God calls us to follow. God's path is not always easy or comfortable, but it is always the path that leads to true fulfillment and peace. Following God's path requires obedience, trust, and a willingness to surrender our own desires for His will. When we walk in righteousness, we align ourselves with God's purpose for our lives. This path may not always be clear, and it may involve trials and sacrifices, but it is the path that leads to eternal significance, to a life that honors God and fulfills His will. Even when the road is difficult, we can trust that God is with us, guiding us every step of the way. The final section of Psalm 23 reminds us of God's constant presence. even in the darkest valleys of life. Though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil. This is not an empty promise. It is a declaration of faith in God's unwavering presence. The valleys we face in life are inevitable, but God assures us that we do not face them alone. His presence is with us, providing comfort, guidance, and protection. As we walk through the valleys of life, whether it be financial hardship, personal loss, or emotional struggles, we can take comfort in the truth that God is right there with us, walking beside us, guiding us with his rod and staff, and leading us to victory. Psalm 23 is more than just a comforting passage. It is a powerful declaration of trust, provision, peace, restoration, and guidance. It is an invitation to live with the confidence that God is with us, that he is our shepherd, and that he will never leave us or forsake us. Through each verse, we are reminded that even in the darkest moments of our lives, God is with us, leading us, providing for us, and restoring us. When we embrace the truths of Psalm 23, we begin to live differently, confident in God's provision, trustful in his guidance, and at peace in his presence. We can face every challenge with faith, knowing that our shepherd will lead us through, always providing, always guiding, and always protecting us. The Lord is my shepherd, a divine promise of care and provision. In the opening words of Psalm 23, we are met with a profound declaration. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. These words are not mere repetition or empty comfort. They carry the weight of a divine promise, a declaration that changes everything. To say, the Lord is my shepherd, is to proclaim a complete surrender and trust in God's provision, care, and guidance. It's a recognition that we are not left to wander aimlessly, nor are we alone in our struggles. We have a shepherd who knows us intimately and leads us with unfailing love and wisdom. When we declare that the Lord is our shepherd, we are not merely reciting words in times of trouble. We are making a statement of deep, unwavering trust in the one who walks with us through every moment of life. This acknowledgement is not based on our present circumstances or the fleeting challenges we face, but on the solid, unshakable truth that God, in his love, provides for us body, mind, and spirit. No matter where we find ourselves, God is with us, guiding our every step, providing exactly what we need when we need it. The imagery of God as our shepherd goes beyond the role of a caretaker. It speaks of a close, personal relationship with God, one where he actively leads, protects, and cares for us. It's not the image of a distant figure. This is the picture of a loving shepherd who walks beside his sheep, ensuring that they are safe, fed, and secure. He doesn't leave us to wander alone, nor does he abandon us in times of uncertainty. Instead, he leads us through the valleys and mountaintops of life, guiding us toward green pastures and still waters, places of peace, renewal, and abundant provision. When we trust in the Lord as our shepherd, we acknowledge that he holds the roadmap of our lives in his hands. Even when the path ahead is unclear, we can trust that he knows the way. We may not always understand the journey, but we can rest in the assurance that our shepherd is leading us toward our ultimate good. This is a promise that transcends earthly understanding. God, in his infinite wisdom and love, is always with us, always providing, and always guiding us. There is a deep peace in recognizing that the Lord is our shepherd. It means that we are never alone, even in our darkest moments. When we face challenges, struggles, and uncertainties, we can lean on the promise that God is with us, walking beside us every step of the way. His presence is not just a comfort in times of need. It is a constant, abiding truth that shapes every aspect of our lives. As our shepherd, God's care for us is complete. He provides, he protects, and he leads us in ways that we cannot see but can always trust. So, let these words from Psalm 23 resonate deep within your spirit. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. It is not just a comforting verse for difficult times. It is a declaration of trust, a reminder that we are fully known and completely cared for by our loving shepherd. No matter the journey, no matter the challenges we face, we can trust that God is leading us with love, wisdom, and provision, guiding us toward the abundant life He has promised. Still waters, peace and abundance in God's provision. He leads me beside still waters is a powerful and comforting promise, offering a glimpse into the peace and abundance found only in God's provision. In a world constantly in motion, where the waters of life often feel turbulent and unpredictable, this verse reminds us of the quiet, unshakable peace that comes from trusting in God's care. The still waters signify a divine tranquility, a peace that surpasses all understanding. These are not the rushing, chaotic waters of the world, but the calm, serene streams that flow from the heart of God, offering rest to the weary soul. God's provision is steady and constant, like the still waters beside which He leads us. The world tells us to strive, to work endlessly to secure our future, and to fill every moment with busyness and worry. Yet, in the midst of this noise, God offers us a different way, a way of peace. His provision is abundant and unchanging, offering us everything we need without the anxiety that often accompanies the pursuit of worldly wealth and success. When we trust in God's ability to meet our needs, we are liberated from the fear of scarcity. We no longer have to live in the stress of wondering whether we have enough. In God, there is no lack. He is our shepherd, and He has promised to provide. Just as still waters provide refreshment to the body, God's provision quenches the deepest thirsts of our hearts. The world can never offer the peace and satisfaction that comes from knowing that we are cared for by a loving Father. When we place our trust in God, we are free to rest in the knowledge that He will provide everything we need for life and godliness. This peace is not the absence of trouble, but the presence of God in the midst of it. It is the confidence that no matter what circumstances we face, God's provision is sure, and His peace is unshakable. In times of financial struggle or personal uncertainty, we are invited to remember the still waters. These quiet streams represent God's ability to meet us in our moments of need, to restore our souls, and to provide for us in ways that go beyond mere material supply. As we learn to trust in His provision, we find ourselves walking in a peace that the world cannot give. We move from fear and scarcity to the abundant assurance that God is everything in control. Let the still waters remind you of God's constant care. He is with you, providing for you, leading you to peace, and filling your heart with the satisfaction that comes from trusting in His abundance. No matter the storm or the season, His peace remains. And in His provision, you will find rest, refreshment, and the unwavering assurance that you were never alone. Restoration of the soul, God's ongoing healing and renewal. He restores my soul, speaks to the profound truth that God's restoration is not merely a momentary fix, but a lifelong journey of continuous healing and renewal. As we navigate through life's struggles, we inevitably face challenges that leave scars, emotional, spiritual, and physical. These wounds can weigh heavily on our hearts, leaving us feeling broken, lost, and disheartened. Yet, God promises that He is in the business of restoration, not just in the immediate, but throughout our entire lives. His healing touch is not limited to a single moment, but extends as an ongoing process that mends and transforms us from the inside out. God's restoration is not just about patching up what is broken, but about making us whole again. It is a work of grace that reaches deep into the very core of who we are. When we experience His restoration, it is as if the pieces of our shattered lives are lovingly gathered and put back together, not as they were before, but in a way that reflects His divine purpose. The hurts, the disappointments, the mistakes we've made, all of these are held in His hands and made new. His love covers the deepest wounds, and His grace turns our pain into something purposeful. Through surrendering to His touch, we allow God to work within us, not just fixing our external circumstances, but healing our hearts and renewing our spirits. His restoration process works in ways that go beyond mere repair. It brings forth newness and vitality. As we open ourselves to His healing, He strengthens us, builds our character, and renews our ability to walk forward with a sense of wholeness and peace. This restoration is not just about what is repaired, but about what is transformed. We are made into something beautiful, something whole, as we embrace the continuous healing power of God. In the midst of life's trials, it's easy to feel as if we are beyond repair, but God's promise to restore our souls assures us that no matter how broken we may feel, He is at work within us. With every tear shed, every heartache endured, He is restoring us, not just to what we once were, but to something greater. We walk forward not as broken vessels, but as people made whole by His love and grace, ready to fulfill the purpose He has set before us. As we experience God's ongoing restoration, we begin to understand that this healing is a daily journey, a process that requires our trust in His timing and His wisdom. God's restoration brings not only healing, but also a renewed sense of strength and purpose. As we allow His love to heal our hearts, we become vessels of His grace to the world around us, showing others that there is no wound too deep, no heart too broken for God to restore. We are called to walk forward in the strength of His restoration, knowing that in Him we are made whole. Walking in righteousness, trusting in God's path. He leads me in paths of righteousness for His name's sake. These words remind us that walking in righteousness is not a journey defined by ease or comfort, but one of deep obedience to God's will. The path of righteousness calls us to make choices that honor God, regardless of how they may conflict with our own desires or the prevailing culture around us. The world often tempts us to stray from this path, offering shortcuts and false promises of fulfillment. Yet, God's call to walk in righteousness is unwavering, inviting us to trust Him, especially in the face of struggles and temptations. When we choose to walk in righteousness, we choose the higher road, the one that leads us closer to God's purpose for our lives. It is not the easy road, but the road that aligns with His truth, and it is through this path that we find true fulfillment and eternal significance. The road may not always be smooth, and the journey may be filled with challenges, but we walk in the assurance that God is leading us every step of the way. It is through the difficult moments, the times when the way seems unclear, that God shapes and refines our character, helping us grow stronger in our faith and more rooted in His Word. The path of righteousness is not about following the world's standards of success and happiness, but about living according to God's standards. It calls us to be different, to stand firm in our convictions, even when they bring us into conflict with the values and expectations of those around us. In moments of temptation, when it would be easier to compromise or take the path of least resistance, we are reminded that the path of righteousness is the one that leads to peace with God and eternal life. God does not promise that walking in righteousness will be without difficulty, but He does promise that He will never leave us nor forsake us. His presence is with us, guiding us through the trials, strengthening us in our weakness, and providing the grace we need to continue. As we trust in God's path for our lives, we can rest in the knowledge that His ways are higher than ours, and that He is working all things for our good. Walking in righteousness is a journey of transformation, a journey that aligns our hearts and lives with God's purpose. It is a journey that may require sacrifice, but the reward is far greater than anything this world can offer. As we walk in righteousness, we become more like Christ, and our lives become a testimony of His love, His grace, and His faithfulness. Through every step, we trust that God is shaping us, refining us, and leading us to a place of greater purpose and fulfillment. God's protection and provision amidst adversity, comfort in the valleys. Though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil. This powerful declaration from Psalm 23 speaks to the heart of every believer facing trials. Life is filled with valleys, those dark, difficult, and often discouraging moments when our faith is tested and our strength seems insufficient. Yet, the psalmist offers us a profound assurance that even in our deepest struggles, we do not walk alone. In the valleys of life, we are not abandoned to face our fears, but we are accompanied by the unshakable presence of God Himself. God's protection in the midst of adversity is not a distant promise. It is a constant reality. His presence is the very shield that surrounds us, safeguarding us from the dangers that lurk in the shadows of life's valleys. The rod and staff of the shepherd represent His guidance and correction, which lead us away from harm and into His divine protection. These instruments of care provide both the discipline we need and the reassurance that we are being protected from forces beyond our control. The rod is a symbol of God's defense against the enemy, and His staff is a reminder that He is guiding us gently, leading us towards safety and peace. When we face the darkest valleys, it is easy to become overwhelmed by fear, anxiety, and the weight of uncertainty. Yet, it is in these very moments that God's presence becomes our greatest comfort. The peace He provides surpasses all understanding, filling our hearts with a quiet assurance that He is with us, no matter how challenging the journey may be. As we walk through the valley, we may not always understand why we must endure the hardship, but we can trust that God's purpose in these moments is greater than the pain we experience. He is refining us, strengthening our faith, and shaping us into the people He has called us to be. In times of adversity, God's provision is never lacking. His provision may not always come in the way we expect or desire, but it will always be sufficient for the moment. Just as the Israelites were provided for in the wilderness, where God supplied them with manna each day, so too does He provide for His people in times of need. His provision is a daily blessing, and He promises to meet all of our needs according to His riches and glory. As we lean into His care and trust in His timing, we can be confident that He will provide exactly what we need to face each challenge, step by step. The valleys of life, though difficult and often painful, are not the end of the story. They are part of the journey that brings us closer to God's heart and refines us for His purposes. It is in these moments that we learn to trust Him more deeply, to rely on His strength rather than our own, and to experience the peace that only He can give. God's protection and provision in the valleys are a reminder that we are never alone in our struggles. He walks beside us, guiding us, comforting us, and providing for us every step of the way. As we walk through the valleys, let us remember that God's presence is our comfort, His protection is our shield, and His provision is our strength. Even in the darkest moments, we can trust that God is with us, and He will lead us through to the other side, where His light will shine brighter than ever before. Living in the fullness of God's blessings, a life of trust and confidence. Psalm 23 stands as more than a passage of comfort in times of distress. It is a divine blueprint for how we are called to live, a life grounded in trust, enveloped in peace, and blessed by God's abundant provision. When we acknowledge the Lord as our shepherd, we accept that He is not only present in our lives, but also fully engaged in guiding, protecting, and providing for us. This trust is not a passive act, but a conscious decision to rely on Him completely, understanding that His provision is all-encompassing and never failing. In every season of life, He promises to be everything we need and more. God, in His infinite wisdom, offers us rest. The psalm speaks of lying down in green pastures, a symbol of peace, nourishment, and divine replenishment. In the world's fast-paced, ever-demanding environment, it is easy to be overwhelmed and drained. Yet, God calls us to rest in His presence, to pause, reflect, and allow His peace to fill our hearts. It is not merely a rest of the body, but of the soul. This is the rest that strengthens our spirit, renews our minds, and restores our hope. As we rest in God, we allow Him to nourish us in ways that material wealth and worldly achievements never can. Walking in righteousness is another key component to living in the fullness of God's blessings. As we align ourselves with God's path, we find that the journey becomes one of divine purpose, where every step is guided by His will. This path is not always the easiest, but it is the one that leads to eternal significance. Even when life presents challenges and obstacles, the righteous path is the one that leads us to the peace of knowing that we are doing God's will. Walking in this righteousness is not about striving for perfection, but about a daily commitment to follow Him, trust Him, and be led by His truth. In times of adversity, when we find ourselves walking through valleys that seem insurmountable, God's presence and provision remain steady. The valleys are not signs of abandonment, but opportunities for God to refine us, teach us, and build within us a deeper trust in His ability to lead us through the darkest of times. These valleys, though difficult, become places of growth. They are not the end of the road, but part of the process that prepares us for greater things. Through it all, God's protection is our shield, and His provision our constant source of strength. To live in the fullness of God's blessings is to embrace His presence in every moment. It is to walk confidently in the assurance that, as His chosen people, we are not just surviving, but thriving in the peace, purpose, and provision He offers. The challenges we face are not obstacles to our success, but opportunities for God to demonstrate His faithfulness and His unfailing love. Through every trial, through every triumph, we are reminded that He is our shepherd, leading us, providing for us, and guiding us into the life He has designed for us. As we trust in God, we are called to live with an unwavering confidence, knowing that His promises are true and that His blessings are abundant. Each step we take is a testament to His goodness, and each season we endure is an opportunity to see His provision manifest in ways we never imagined. Trusting in God allows us to live not just with hope, but with the certainty that we are walking in the fullness of His blessings, trusting that He will always provide, protect, and guide us every step of the way.